Warm welcome to this lecture with the designer Piet Hein Eek. It's got a very long title, a lecture about my career and the growing awareness about myself and the world. The designer and also I would say producer, he prefers to be called a designer because he does so many different things. He will talk us through his work from the beginning till today, his design philosophy and his ideas. His Piet Hein Eek's work rests on a big respect for the environment and for the material. It's about efficiency in every aspect of the process and about making products and environments that last. So let's welcome Piet Hein Eek with a big applause. Welcome, the stage is yours. We will do a short Q&A after the lecture, so I will be back on stage. Welcome.
Thank you. I didn't think about the name of this talk actually. I just sent a text message where it was about. And the whole message is the title now. So we called it much more simple. What I would like to explain, I don't know if it will work out, but we'll try, is what happened during 25 or almost 30 years of working. So it's like a chronological story, right from the beginning until the end. And so I end with the end, which sounds logic, but if I explain directly what I'm thinking now, I think nobody would understand, at least I wouldn't. So I just start really with the beginning, and slowly you will be part of the way my thoughts about myself changed, because I just started and didn't know anything except one thing. I'll reveal it in the end. So there is only one thing I'm proud of, that I actually thought about it in the beginning, and the rest sort of coincidentally happened. With most of the stories I tell are small anecdotes where something happened I didn't expect, but it was good, so we went on. So the first picture is a chair I made when I was 13. It's not that big, as you can see, and it was made from matches and glue and rope and a surgeon knife on my room on the highest floor in our home. So I worked at that moment with the materials and techniques which were available, and I wasn't aware about that, but actually that was what I was doing afterwards also. So for my degree in 1990 at the Design Academy, I made a cupboard of scrapwood, and this actually gave me a sort of left-wing recycle name, and everybody tried to push me in a corner like, oh, Piet Hein Eek, he's thinking about the world. And actually I do, but I didn't like the idea that this cupboard was only nice because it was of recycled material. I thought it was a good cupboard of beautiful material. And if you look at it, you can see how it's made. It's scrapwood in a frame. I quarreled with my teachers like the complete year because they thought I should make something inspired by the scrapwood. So the scrapwood should be inspiring, and then each time a different cupboard. But I was an industrial designer, so I wanted to make a serial product with different material, and I loved the material. I really liked it. And actually it was cheap at that moment. Now it's really expensive because of myself. But at that moment I could get it for free. And I could work on it on the workplaces at school. So I was able to manufacture an example for my degree for no money except my own energy. And I had a product which I could actually sell later on. It was a real product, which sounds funny, but when I got my degree, almost all products were mock-ups. So if you wanted to open a door, the hinges were fake because it should be produced industrial, and it's not industrial because it's just one example, and the doors were not opening. So I thought I make a product which actually functions and it will be possible to produce with limited possibilities later on in my own workplace. It was very small. I knew I wanted to produce myself. So it was also a starting point for what I had in mind for my own career. And the wood was cheap, but after preparing it for production, it became expensive because it takes a lot of work to make it suitable for production. So if you do that, you don't want to throw anything away. So that's the reason why we made the structure, I made a structure, where I could put even the smallest parts, which were leftovers, and even if they were twisted, you can still use it because of the solid frames and the small parts. So 100% of the material, almost 100%, we could use if we produced a cupboard. So since then, it's still in the collection. So it's more than 30 years now. And just like 1.5 years ago, we made a series and we put it on Facebook. And we sold all the series in 2 weeks. And I thought, this is funny. And actually, that's the reason why it's in the presentation again, because it still tells the whole story about the way I work, that I always use material and technique and craftsmanship as the basic 3 components of my designs. So the first cupboard was there. It actually gave a sort of flying start. Everybody loved it. Nobody bought it, but worldwide we sold several, enough to survive, and we added new products. And one of the problems we had all the time, and we still have, is that everything I design and we sell is in small quantities. So you're not able to produce with high starting cost, with expensive molds. So if you make a small series, you have to be able to start immediately, and you don't want to make big quantities, and you don't want to invest too much in the development of the product. So a lot of our products and my designs are made like you can see here with details which you can see. So for example, we have an old Philips building. Philips would sell hundreds of thousands of lamps, make one mold, and then push every 10 seconds one lamp. And we make, with nice machines, individual parts and put them together. And sometimes the way it's put together, with all the details you can see, is nicer than the one mold stamp. And then all of a sudden, the fact that you manufacture by hand and the simplicity of it is a reason to buy it. So the disadvantage of manufacturing small quantities becomes an advantage as soon as the details which it provides are more desirable than the mass production products. This is actually an example of 1994, and again, it's still in the collection, and we sell better than we did before. So each year better. Not much, but always a little bit better. It's a little bit the story of my life. This chair is a scrapwood chair. Actually, it's called the oak chair in scrapwood, because we made it in oak, and later on we did it in scrapwood, and that's why it had his name, like that strange name. And again, you see the details, how it's made. I realized just recently that the way we produce this chair is that it stays very much around one machine. So instead of having a product going through the process of all the machines, which is the normal way of producing efficiently, we produce our products very much that we don't travel with the material throughout the building, because it takes time, and for small quantities you don't want to lose this time. So it's the way we manufacture. If you look at the chair, you see like small parts, like a leg and a shelf and the back. And at a certain moment I realized that wood which we have, which is 100% suitable to produce, we can't keep it in a shelf and then use it to produce this chair. And not because the chair won't be nice, but the problem is that if you do that and you take small pieces and you assemble them, it's taking much more time than in comparison to preparing from big quantities of the same wood. So all the wood we have, a big part of it we throw away because it takes too much labor to actually put it on a shelf and to use it when you need it. So instead of that, we use big shelves, cut, preferably one cut, 2 legs, much more faster, and we take like 2 hours for a chair, is it? So we calculate each chair, either the chair or the employee, or both sides we calculate. So we're very firm on the economics, but it creates actually a situation that material which is 100% suitable becomes waste. And I was very much annoyed about this idea, because in my whole career and until now, I make a lot of products of the leftovers from other products or leftovers from other processes or without leftovers. And all of a sudden I realized, because we're so expensive, we throw away material. So material is not an important part of the process, which is strange if you think about mankind rapidly increasing in terms of quantities. You know, the men are, I always say, like rabbits. And the other way around, we're consuming materials very fast. So it's strange that you throw away material in comparison to labor. So I thought, I turn it around. I just act as if labor is for free and material is worth a fortune. And I started redesigning, and the first design I made was actually a little stool. And after that stool, where everybody was quite enthusiastic about, an intern came and he asked me what to do. And I said, well, you just make a table from old stuff from the containers, from our own containers. So he started patchworking and piling up pieces of wood. And after a few weeks, he came back and he said, I finished the table. It was really rough, because it was really everything we threw away. He made a table of. It was bended like this, so we had to put a metal beam underneath, and then it was straight. And he asked me how to finish it. I said, well, lacquer it 10 times, as long as it is a lot of work, because work is for free. You know, the whole idea was that labor was for free. And he started lacquering 10 times one, and sanding, lacquering, sanding, lacquering, sanding, lacquering. And I was inspired by that, because we renovated a Riva, a motorboat, 10 years before, or a few years before. And normally, if you do that, it becomes really shiny. So I thought it's like yin-yang lacquering, sanding, and in the end I get a shiny table. And then he, after a week or two, it's a perfect commission for an intern. So 1 sentence, 2 weeks of work. And he came back and he said, it's wonderful, Piet, you should come. And we took a look, and the lacquer was, instead of totally smooth, it was like ceramics. It was a little bit to the corners of the patchwork wood. So we had like a ceramic glazed table, sort of. And we started calculating how much it should cost, because labor is not for free, of course. And we stopped, at that time it was the guilder time, so the previous currency. It's about 13,500 euros now, which was the most expensive table we've ever had, the most expensive product we've ever had. At that moment we had a table which was 1/20 of the price, and we did not sell a lot because it was too expensive. So, but we were thinking about, are we going to take this table to a fair, which we always attended, and I thought, well, we won't sell it, but it's a beautiful story, and we hang the lamp above it, and maybe we sell the lamp. So we took the table to the fair, put the lamp above it, and then before actually the fair opened, a guy came in and said, I want to buy the table. And I said, are you sure? He said, yes, I'm sure. I said, do you take a cup of coffee, because it's really expensive, and if you come back, you can. Dus he bought the table, and 2 hours later, 2 guys were quarreling who was going to buy the table. So I was totally surprised, because we normally sell very slow. We made a little book about chairs. It's like 200 chairs I designed. And we added a sort of sadomasochistic book it is. We added also the quantities of sales to it. If you only read this part of the book, it's the saddest book you've ever read. If you read the stories about the moment you design and you think you designed the best thing ever, it's a very nice book and the pictures are in it. But I like the idea that most of what you think about is not successful. And of course, a few of them, like the chair I showed, is quite successful. But so we were used not selling, and we did everything you normally don't do if you want to sell, and this table actually sells. So it's totally the upside down world from what we expected. And since then, this waste material products and projects has been really, really important. We have this table, we have it in sheet material, we have metal waste products. Nowadays we have waste. So from this table we have waste, and we cut it in small pieces. and we make even more exclusive furniture, and again, it sells really good, so it's totally crazy. And I've been thinking about how is it possible that you actually sell something which is totally created with the opposite idea of what you think you should do if you want to be successful, at least in terms of economics. And then I thought the reason why I made it was that I was not allowed or able to make a product without throwing away, while using leftovers, which are 100% suitable, but because we're too expensive, it's impossible to use. And this idea actually is a very important idea for everybody, but because if you do something, you don't take as much time as possible. Everybody wants to be as efficient as possible, and even we want to be so efficient, extremely efficient, that you don't want to spoil time. So you're always in a hurry to be as efficient as possible, and then all of a sudden there is a product which is not at all about efficiency. It's the opposite of what we do, and it's maybe the most valuable thing in our society, and that's plenty of time. Nobody has plenty of time, and this table is made with plenty of time. And actually I think that this is the reason why this series of products is quite successful, because it's the biggest scarceness in our world is time, and it's like solid time, the whole series of products. Most people who know me or my work think about scrapwood and old materials, but we also have like this product. We have a lot of different products in our collection. I only show a few. This is called, the right one is called the 97.6% cupboard, and left below it's the 99.13% cupboard. And it's called like that because it's the biggest, it's 99.13% material use. So we only have 0.87 leftovers, which is a handful of small pieces of metal, which are the holes to put the blind rivets in. So actually the whole cupboard is 100% material use. And in my collection, and with all my designs, there's always the attempt to be as efficient as possible with material technique and materials, like I said in the beginning. And whether you make something without leftovers or you make something from leftovers, in both cases, the idea is to have as much respect as possible for the material. So this is brother and sister. The scrapwood table and this 99% series are brother and sister of the same mind, of the same way of thinking. And this way of thinking, not throwing away, has accumulated in a sort of apotheosis of using rubbish. So I had for a long time the idea to make from my own leftovers, so my own rubbish, but then real rubbish. So I wouldn't even think that I could do something with it, to make bustes. And bustes are almost the oldest way of making art. So I thought if I can make from real rubbish art, I do the best thing I've ever done in terms of increasing value for materials. So I started, the left above is a Tenerife plastic. Left below is the drawer of charges I took at home. Everybody has a drawer of charges with which you can make a bust like that. And that one is from pallet wood from the workplace, which normally goes into the heating system. And we made like 10 busts, all of rubbish, real rubbish. So and it was like for me, it was a nice project, like the waste table. And the waste table, of course, was quite important. And this is important for me. And this is the workplace. If you start producing yourself, this is only a part of the workplace, I must say. If you start producing yourself and it works out, then you have like the workplace, the offices, the storage, the showroom, gallery. We all have all kind of places. And this is my office. I call it a fishbowl. This is actually, if people walk around in our place, because you can walk around this workplace, you can see everywhere how we produce, where we produce, what we produce. They always think it's ambitious because of the size. And I always say, it's not the size which matters. It was not at all an idea of me that it should be big. I just wanted to produce my own furniture, and I wanted to create my own world. And this is actually what I thought about when I got my degree. I had to write a small thesis, and one of the sentences I wrote was, if you want to do well, you have to feel like a fish in the water. So to create your own circumstances is much more important than to set all kind of goals. So right from the moment I got my degree until I opened the first workshop, I only put a lot of energy in creating my own world. And the idea behind it is that if you feel good, the chance that you make good designs is much bigger. And if you make good designs, the chance that you're successful is much bigger. So, and I don't believe a lot in predicting the world and the future and making plans, because they're always different from what I expect. At least my plans are always different from what I expect. But by creating this world, I create the best circumstances for success, not knowing what it will be. So I don't bother about the future. And even if you don't believe that, if it doesn't work out, at least you have had a nice time in the meanwhile, because you had a nice environment. So all the time it was fun. So I think from 2 points of view, it's a very good way to set a career, is to think about, how do I want to work? What are the best circumstances for me to perform? And this is an example of that. We made a small shed for a comedian in Holland, a writer, comedian, musician. And it's like a shed of logs. And there's a small studio in it where he makes his music, he writes, he sleeps. So we just made his own small place, which is as good as a big place, as long as it gives you the opportunity to do what you want. So this is a very important idea in my career, is that it doesn't matter what you do as long as you are happy with what you're doing. This cupboard actually gained importance because of the building we bought. I gave a lot of lectures and walking around in the building, explaining to people what I was doing. And this is one of the products which has been all the way with me. It's from 1993, one of the first products I designed. The original one was designed with old glass, which I found on a dump yard. And the only thing I did was making a square piece of wood where I could put the glass in with a little clip. So there's only one detail around glass with clips, and you have a cupboard. And we sold 5 or 6 of those cupboards immediately. And then we wanted to buy glass to actually produce the cupboard, but the glass was more expensive than where we actually sold the cupboard for. So this was not a good idea. So we stopped producing, and then almost 10 years later, we bought a router, a computerized router, and this was the perfect machine to make this cupboard. So I thought, well, we try it again. And then I found out that the company in the meanwhile grew, so we had much better buying circumstance. So we bought like with 80% discount. So all the time we've been sort of been fools, you know, like if you buy something for 100% or with 80% discount, it means that in the meanwhile you paid too much. So I found out after 10 years because of this cupboard, and we adjusted the size to another cupboard which was very successful. And since then it's in the collection, and we sell like 20 to 40, maybe one or two a week. So it's 100 a year, something like that. And we just presented the one on the left as this year. So it's more than 25 years later, a new model we added. And so I was telling this story all the time. It's fun, and that you actually, by going on, you realize what happens, and that the cupboard was so important. And all of a sudden, I realized that the reason why our company actually exists, or one of the reasons, is that the designs I made are still available. So everything I've been thinking of, everything I've done, is still available for the company. And if you think or compare my way of working, by coincidence, so I didn't know that before, with a normal process where designers are involved, they design for another company, and again another company. So each time you have to start a process, but if you have a design, you can't use it 10 years later in a different way. You don't know that the glass is cheaper. You don't know that this machine is able to make it better, or that the volume or the proportions of another cupboard are much better than this cupboard. So because by cutting processes in pieces and designers working for all kind of different companies, of course you gain knowledge, but the knowledge doesn't stay in the same organization. And by coincidence, because we just do everything ourselves, everything is still available in this simple company. And this actually is the biggest difference between what we do and what most self-producing designers do, or even not producing designers, is that all efforts you do are scattered all over the world, so they don't help each other. So by coincidence, because we started producing ourselves, we are still able to take advantage of everything we've done before. Simple idea, never thought about it, but I think it's one of the major reasons why we survive, and or why we exist. Maybe that's a nicer word. Another important aspect is with the lamp I showed, is that we make small quantities. And a few years ago, 2 years ago, we had to reconsider the collection, because we had like 500 products or something, 400 something. So it was way too much. And I was walking through the showroom and thinking, which one are we skipping, and how are we going to do new prices? And I thought the showroom is much bigger than our storage. Our warehouse is very small and the showroom is big. And then I thought, because you make small quantities and even one-offs, you don't have a warehouse full of your stock. If something doesn't sell, you just sell your prototype. You don't sell your prototype. And even it's funny to think about it, if you make one prototype and people don't like it, it's even unique. So the chance that you sell your failure is much bigger than you have 100, 1,000 or 100 or 20. So producing the way we do, which is quite difficult in small quantities, has the benefit or the profit that you don't put money in storage or in stock, but that it's all in products and that it's on-demand delivery. That sounds quite modern, and it's like a business concept, but I only thought about it like 30 years after I started. So it was a business concept avant la lettre, sort of. Devant la lettre. So this is the showroom, a very small part. And now a little in-between story about the IKEA collection. I got a lot of questions about it. People are fascinated about at least one of the first questions people ask is, why are you working with IKEA? Because it's quite a different brand. And I always say, because I met somebody at IKEA I really like. So simple story, but it's not the only story, of course. Because IKEA is very different from what we are. So if you're asked by a company to do something and you're creative, it doesn't make sense to do something you're already doing. It makes sense to do something completely different. What I didn't realize at that moment is that there is a big similarity between IKEA and us, is that both companies think about the whole process from ID until consumer, which is not normal. Most people are only thinking about the product or the process of producing or the logistics, but both we and IKEA have the problem that if we invent something, it has to come to the consumer. So all the things which are important to make a product successful, we both communicate about it very easily. And so we started because I liked Karen and Karen liked me. So that's just two persons who liked each other, and that's the main reason why we started. But the reason to give permission for the collection was actually that I had the idea of handmade serial produced. That was became one of the most important parts of this collection. We had handmade serial produced. We had industrial inspired, so industry which needs work. If you design something for an industry which is going down, you might create sales for them, which is important if you collaborate for a long time, like IKEA does with suppliers. And the other thing was not throwing away, so no waste. And actually all parts of this, those 3 themes are in the collection. I showed it this, I took some with me. There, maybe you, yes, very good. So you can, it's one of the last designs I made. The whole idea is handmade, serial produced, and it's made at Arc in France. And I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands, 2 machines, like child room big revolver machines producing bum, 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 those glasses. And they have, after this process of bum, bum, they have a whole series of quality control, and they have to switch it off because it looks if it's round. But this is not round at all, because we made like a very lousy drawing, because I can make better drawings than this. But we made a handmade drawing, and we actually produced it the thinnest possible in their machines. And what's funny, because I invented it myself, when I got it for the first time and I had it in my hand, I thought it really feels handmade. And it's such a different idea from Duralex or the normal round mass-produced products, that this theme actually provided very nice products. And well, I love it. And the idea also that it's cheap is also nice, of course. That's, if we make a glass, if I think about glass, it's expensive. If IKEA makes glass, it's not that expensive. And this is the same idea. I've been drawing towels, and they asked me to do something with a Russian supplier for hand towels. And I'm not a designer for fabrics. And I was making all kind of drawings and difficult. And then I thought I'd just make checks and stripes by hand, which is impossible. If you start making stripes like this, they're not straight. And then we used this, because I knew it was a Chagall machine, which can make flowers and everything you want. So we used a very high-end machine to copy a lousy drawing. So it feels like really handmade, it really feels, and it's actually mass-produced on a very nice machine. And the only thing was to make the best drawing I could, which was by definition a very bad drawing. So, and the quality is very nice also, but you can't see that really on the picture. And this is no waste. Those shelves, I made 10 designs when we started, and only 2 survived. So the rest slowly, we changed the collection while working, and this was one of the first ideas. It's exactly 1 sheet. The cupboard on the left is exactly 1 sheet, so you don't throw away anything except sawdust. So, and I thought it was a nice idea. You can connect them vertical and horizontal, so you can do what you want with it. And then first they said, it's very simple, Piet. I said, yes, but maybe it's good, I don't know. So we started producing, and it was very simple, but when we started connecting them and putting them against the wall, then it became nice. And then we presented it in our place during the design week, so that was almost 1.5 years later from the first design. I thought, this is fun. So we make a shelf for IKEA, and we don't have any waste, so you don't throw anything away. But you produce 40,000. So 40,000 no waste is like a house full of waste you don't throw away. So my whole idea of not throwing away for my own collection is like a natural wish to be as efficient as possible with material. But for IKEA, you make really a difference if you have the same idea. So all of a sudden, again, afterwards, I thought this is a good reason to work with IKEA, because the same ideas about efficient production are for IKEA much more important than they are for me. So now the last part, this is a ruin. So in this ruin, everything comes a little bit together. It's my ruin. And since I was a child, so when I made the small chair, when I was 13, 14, I went with my father to England, and we went through the Lake District in Wales, and I wanted to see as many ruins as possible per day. So like 10 or 14, and I checked all the ruins, and then it must have been very bad experience for my father, but he never complained. And we looked, and the only thing I always wanted when I see a ruin is buy it. So I don't want to buy anything, but a ruin I want to buy. I want to have a ruin, I always. So the first ruin I could buy was this ruin. I bought it. And So then after that you have a problem and much time, because it takes loads of time before you actually create something. It took me 10 years to make us, I must say, to make from a ruin 2 new houses. And after a while I realized that the ruin represents the past. So you can fantasize about the past, but you can also fantasize about the future. So both past and future are in this ruin represented, and if it's yours, you're in charge of it all of a sudden. You're allowed to make from what it was to what it will become. And that's actually what I'm always doing. I always take what's there to make something new. It's not something like I want to make something new. It's always what's available and what that inspires me to make something new. So we made something new. So this was a hole in the ground. So if you go back, this on the left there, that's this one. And so we have artists who make art in the houses, and we made it completely on the basement of the old houses. But all techniques are sort of adjusted to those times, but still inspired on this environment. And while working there, 10 years it took, I realized why the mill was there. Of course, because of the water. That was I realized when I bought it. But when you walk around this area, you see everywhere you see upstream, like rocks which are vertical. And it's like mankind, somebody did that. And I didn't realize it until a few years later, or maybe 7 years, it took a long time. And I thought they used those rocks as a stone yard for the dike and the building. And they used the water to transport the stones to as a transport facility. So the water also provided the transport for the huge stones. The stones, there's impossible to move even with a machine sometimes. And they used, of course, the wood from the forest. But they also found out that they put the dike directly on the rocks on a very narrow place with a big valley behind it. So if they close it, they have a lot of water for the water power. And I found out that you need to be on the rocks, otherwise the water goes through. So we had some real Dutch problems over there. The water went everywhere except where I wanted it. So, and in winter, the sun goes down in the valley. So you have the longest possible sun in the house. So I slowly realized that this mill is over there because nature provided all the circumstances to build it over there. And then I realized that it's not, for me, not only a story about old and new, bringing the past and the future together, but also that if you do something, it's important to take what the world provides as a starting point and then make something with that. And of course, a mill is a sort of pre-industrial complex. And by industrialization, we created a world where everything seems to be possible. If you want to have marble from Egypt, it's no problem. You as an architect, you get marble from Egypt. But I think we overestimate ourselves and we think that everything is possible. But in the end, this mill tells a different story, that you have to respect the world for what it provides and do something with what it provides. And if you think about footprint and ecologic matters and so on, I think it's most important to think about be efficient with natural sources. And I don't mean natural sources, the source itself, but what's around you. If you work a lot for the company story, if you make something in 1993 and it's still available, it's much more efficient than every year new stuff. If you're able to take advantage of everything you've done, it's much more efficient than everything new all the time. And if you make something from material which is there, you don't have to transport it, so it's much more efficient. And if it's not possible, like 150 years ago, it's normal to do it like that, but because we can do everything we want, we forgot that it's nature in the end which determines what we do, and it's not the other way around. So for me, the mill more or less gave me a story where I feel comfortable with, if I think about my work and the way I try to make my products. So that's sort of the last part of my story now. So I'm finished. Thank you very much for the attention.
Wow,
So-
thank you so much for a very, very inspiring talk. I would like to hear a little bit more about the factory and creating your own circumstances, because, I mean, today you have about 60 people working
Yeah,
there.
full 100, 60 full-time, 100 in total.
Wow. But how did you go about from the start when you graduated from Eindhoven till the road to it becoming what it is today? What has been the challenges of setting it up this way?
Ooh.
Many.
No, that's. I always had the idea that if you produce alone, you can't do a lot. So if I turn it around, I often get the question now, are you able to design actually? Because there's 100 people walking around. And I always say, you don't ask it to a designer who is alone. And they are actually not designing because they have to send the invoice, call when it's not paid, go to the client. So if an organization grows a little bit, you get also the possibility to be more a specialist on your own field if others do theirs. So I tend to think that is also the reason why it grew, that you're able to organize the process better.
And how important has graduating from Eindhoven and being based in Holland been to your work and setting this factory up?
Yeah, when I graduated, at that moment Dutch design has been stimulated a lot. I didn't like the way they did it, but I had profit of it.
What was it you didn't like about it?
Well, they presented Dutch design. It was droog design, so it was very, very like mono-focused on a very specific way of designing, and I was not part of it, but many others weren't. So they sort of presented Dutch design in a way that it had only one content, and like all design, it should be like individual designers, like everywhere, and they are. So the real Dutch design was much wider than what they presented, but perhaps because they made it very simple, people adopted it, and we still had the benefits of Dutch design.
And today, when companies contact you, and you work for different companies like IKEA, you mentioned here, what design ethos do they have to have in order for you to be interested to work with them, or do you think that way?
I don't work that much with other brands, so often most often it's the connection I have with the people. I think it's important to have like a good feeling with the people you collaborate with, and maybe the first 5 or 6 collaborations were with companies which work like fair trade and so on. So in the beginning, it was only this kind of company. So this part was good enough.
And what has been the main learnings when you work with others? Is it something you've been able to bring into your own production from those learnings?
IKEA was very interesting because of the quantities. So everybody learned. So we had so many funny discussions and problems to be solved, and quantities make a huge difference. I found out. For example, I was annoyed about the fact that they produce only for one season, but they only have 10,000 numbers. So if they add numbers, they have to change the whole infrastructure. You know, all the stores have to be bigger. The transport problems, logistic problems become big. So they say, okay, 10,000 is not more. So if something comes in, something goes out. So I didn't realize it, but for them it's that's a truth to go on like they do. And then I was annoyed. And then I thought, yeah, but they make 35,000 at least, and our best-selling chair is 5,000 in 10 years. So actually, for them, it was much more efficient than what I do for myself. But I still was annoyed.
But what was the biggest challenge? Was there anything that you felt you had to say no to because of how the company worked?
With IKEA?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I said it's not good enough. So that's the only reason to stop was that some of the designs, sometimes it's difficult to keep the quality you have in mind throughout the whole process. So we had to cut off some processes for different reasons. And the only moment, uh, I, there's only one product which I really, they liked it and I said it's not good enough, so we're not going to this.
Okay. And did you actually travel to all the different countries of production, or
A
how
lot,
did?
not to Russia. That was a funny story also.
Tell me.
Yeah, yeah. So I made the drawings, and then they digitalized it, but like with the square blocks. So
Okay.
not with not with fluid organic lines. So and first time and second time, and then I said, shall we digitalize it? I don't know anything about it. So we did, and then we got the first one, which was good. And then she said, "Oh, this is good enough." The other one we skip. I said, "No, no, we do the same." And we had the same problem. They were not able to digitalize these drawings because they didn't understand that it should be the lousy drawing which should be copied. So, and then in the end, we ended up copying our own lousy drawing and make it digital and then send it, and that worked out quite well. So,
What was the most inspiring factory visit from that collaboration?
um, the risk management of IKEA. So they have always teams, and one of the team members is always thinking about risk, about safety, and so we have our products, and if we have a nut in it or something, then I don't care, because we sell not too much. And if a child puts his finger in a nut of our table, he gets hit. He said, "You don't damage the table of Piet Hein Eek." But if IKEA has a nut, they probably put the child's finger in, break it, and say, "Okay, you come here with money." So they have they sell so much that a small risk is a big risk, and even people search for the risk to make money. So they have a total different attitude towards risk, which is reasonable. That we had like a rocking chair, so it's a rocking chair. So we made it, and everybody's working on the rocking chair. And at a certain moment, somebody said, "Yeah, but this is a rocking chair." I said, "Yes, it's a rocking chair. That's not allowed. So you have to put something to avoid it rocking." He said, "Then it's not a rocking chair." Because you can put your finger underneath. So really funny.
That's funny. I know that you were mentioning it earlier as well, that you were kind of cornered with this sustainability designer from the start, where you saw it as a logic result of what you were doing. It's been quite a few years since you graduated, and today the design industry look a bit different. How do you see the changes, especially in terms of companies thinking a bit more about the world we live in and the resources?
Yeah, in general, one of the reasons why I didn't feel comfortable is that most designers actually think about this kind of themes. So it's not my specific quality, and it shouldn't be a specific quality. If something is normal, you shouldn't say, "Oh, it's special, look at me." So I always thought, of course you try to make products without throwing away. And the funny thing is, if you export this idea to IKEA, it makes much more sense. But I always say, "Yeah, I don't throw away with this product, but we don't sell a lot, so it doesn't make that much sense." And then all of a sudden you realize, but there it's okay. So I think it's a general thought, and it's normal, and it shouldn't be too important. I think quality in general is an important thing, so you don't have to throw it away. If you make something very like with FSC wood and everything is correct, and you make a lousy product which you throw away after a year, everybody can think about the fact that this is really worse than if you do everything very bad and you keep it 100 years. Best, of course, is make something for 100 years in a perfect way.
That's very true. How do you keep developing your ideas within your studio when you work in the factory and with your co-workers?
Yeah, I never had one moment without huge challenges. So at this moment we're doing a lot of architecture. This is just a private thing, but we build a lot, and that brings new ideas and problems. and you try to solve them. And while solving, you get new ideas for your collection also. So by staying on the move and keeping new ideas and new projects and new directions mainly, you get also a dynamic which gives enough ideas, always enough.
In terms of architecture, is it private customers that come to you and ask you to work for them or with them on certain projects?
Also, redevelopments, but we also did some bigger redevelopments from old industrial buildings to 12 homes, for example, and then from an old pump building to 12 homes. So we do also the whole process. So from the first idea until the customer. So until the people actually live there, we're doing it. So it's the same what we do with our collection, we try to do with the architecture.
So tell me a bit more in specific, how do you develop those homes? What do you add to them?
For example, the pump building, which is near to our own building, we had the idea of making homes in it, which was difficult because we had to add light and air. So we went right through it, and we made 2 blocks instead of 1, which is quite nice. And then we put orange ropes in it, and we invited people to come and take a look at their future home. They actually bought in this ruin, sort of. Say, okay, do me that one. So we sold like half or 3/4 just by orange ropes, and no, not even Facebook, just a little bit of Facebook. So if you want, you can come. And it was in the middle of the crisis, so we didn't expect to sell it, but it was good.
So you were actually the developer then as well?
We did everything.
Everything. But is it also a private? Could I come to you?
Yeah, we do a lot of private people. We do everything. If we like it, we do it.
What has been your most challenging project within architecture?
Maybe this project which I just told, because it was difficult, took a long time. So not in terms of organization, but in terms of aesthetics and solutions. This was a difficult one because we had a building which was too big to put houses in terms that they all had a nice light and air situation, because that's important. If you live somewhere, you want to go out, you want to have, you want a normal home. Yeah. And we actually solved it in a very simple way. So when I thought about it, I thought, this is stupid, why did it take so long? But it was actually quite difficult.
And today when you teach or when you meet younger students, what advice do you want to give to them?
Well, the only thing I think I did, I had a good idea about, so in front of what happened, was that you really have to create your own environment. I think that's a really important issue.
And can I just ask as a final question, when you started all this and built this up, have you done it on your own accord, or have you had help from investors, or have it been one step at a time?
One step at a time. So no investors.
Wow.
Small. I had some subsidy from the government in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I bought machines and hired employees for that. So everybody said, you're crazy. I said, yes, but I want to go on.
That's very impressive. Thank you so much for this very, very inspiring presentation. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.